today I'm going to show you how to make an animation like this using Rough Animator. So it's got quite a lot of different styles of animation going on, from this one which is kind of drawing in, to some different kind of shapes forming and things kind of dropping in or coming out of the page or the screen. So I'm just going to start a new project, close that project, new. Okay, so now I'm going to import my image that I want to animate. So I've already made this, I haven't drawn it in Rough Animator, I've made it in Procreate, but I'm just going to go to import image, here it is. Okay, so you'll notice that that's just come in on layer 1 up here, and the first thing that I want to do is split this layer into a few different layers so that I can work on different parts of it at different times and it doesn't all get too sort of confusing. So I'm just going to call this layer original, just so I've still got it there as a backup, but I'm just going to use the selection tool here, and I'm going to select the different parts that I want. So I'm going to have one layer, I'm going to copy that, add an empty layer above, which I'm going to call this, and paste it on there. Then I'm going to go back to my original layer. Again, I'm going to use the selection tool, and this time I'm going to use that bit. I'm going to copy that again, add an empty layer. This one is going to be called Is How We, just so I know what I'm doing. Okay, again I'm going to go back to the original, select this part, and copy that. You're going to do it a lot neater than I am, and I'm going to call that one do, paste it on there, and I'm going to copy the last bit, which is it. So add an empty layer, paste. Great, so now I've got all my different elements on different layers, which is great. So I'm just going to turn the original off, so that does opacity. Now my background's also disappeared, so I'm just going to change the background colour. How do I do that? So the annoying thing about when you're trying to change the background colour in Rough Animator is that when you go to change it, it doesn't have this pipette tool, so you have to find out the colour value first if you're using a colour that's already in your animation. So I've just gone into the brush settings here, use the pipette tool, clicks on the colour, and I'm just going to note down these colour values here so that I can change the background to those. So mine are 70, 60, 136 for RGB, 70, 60, 136. So now I'm going to go up here. No, not. Where's the, oh, it's here. Background colour, and I'm just going to put in here 70, so then that should match exactly what I want, which it does, which is good. Okay, so I've got my background there, which is in place, and then I've turned the original off for the moment, so I'll just use that in case I accidentally delete one of these. And for the moment I'm going to turn all the rest of these off so that I can just focus on one bit at a time. So the first bit I'm going to be working on is this. So it's a similar kind of process to what I was doing before. So I've done another Rough Animator tutorial video, so if you haven't seen that one, maybe just check it out first, because it's a little bit simpler and it kind of shows you where all the basics are, and this one's is a little bit more complex maybe. But it's a similar kind of process. So the lettering that I've got here is essentially the finished product, and I'm going to work backwards from that to make it look as though it's drawing in. So I'm just going to be erasing little bits at a time, cutting little bits off so that it looks like when you play it forwards it's going from nothing to full. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to not that. I'm going to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to try and keep this layer that's full, as in it's all drawn in already at the end. So I'm going to go back to the first layer, and I'm just going to, let me zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to erase a little bit at a time. So one of the kind of extra challenges with this lettering that I'm doing here is that because I've got these purple lines within the lettering, that's something that I need to think about when I'm doing this erasing as well. So just to make it look like it hasn't been cut off like it is, I'm just going to kind of round off the ends of those little purple lines. Actually want that to be a bit thicker. So yeah, just so it looks as though I haven't chopped it off with a knife at the end. I'm just going to try and keep these lines here nice and rounded. So we're going from that to that, so it's kind of growing in. And you can do as many frames as you like. The more frames that you do, the smoother your animation will look. So if you don't do as many, it might look a little bit jumpy. Yeah, so I tend to do quite a lot of frames, although it does take longer. So actually already between that one and that one, that's actually quite a big jump. So I'm going to go in already. I'm going to duplicate that middle one. And I'm just going to create a halfway point between this and that. So I'm going to use the eraser again, just because I think I took a little bit too much off that last one, and I think it's going to look a little bit too jumpy. So here I'm just going to get rid of that line completely so it can animate in the next frame rather than that one. Again, just keeping the ends nice and round. Good, so that's better already. I'm just going to do a few more of those. Okay, so you kind of get the idea around what I'm trying to do here. And essentially I'm just going to do that for all of that word so that it animates in nice and smoothly. Do as many frames as I can. Another thing that's quite handy to do is if I just add a new layer on top, just as a bit of a guide layer. So yeah, I'm just going to use this as guide and set it to like 50% opacity or so. And I'm just going to make this guide layer last a bit longer, so like 15 frames or so that I can see it. Okay, and for here I'm just going to draw a line which can be the line that I follow to animate the words in. So although the letters start here, I want it to come from the top of the page as though it's kind of drawing like fluidly. almost like drips of water are forming the word. So I want the sort of drips to come in from here and then really smoothly go down here and just follow this line as I come through. And then at the end as well, even though it finishes here, I just want that to carry on and sort of go down here. And then this part, I'm going to have that dropping in here. So maybe by the time this bit gets to like here, this will start coming in down here. So let me just show you what I mean by those bits coming in from the side. I'll do it at the end. So once the S is all animated in and it gets to that point, I'm going to add I'm going to dupe that layer after. And I'm just going to draw rather than erase. Going from that, I'm going to draw a little bit more white. Oh, not green. A little bit more white on top there. So it's like it's carrying on a little bit more. And actually, I don't want to duplicate this layer. I want to duplicate the final finish layer. So I'm just going to add that one, and then I'm going to use this button up here, if you can see where I'm pointing, that one, to bring that layer to bring that frame to the end, sorry. So going from there to there, and the next one is obviously going back to the original, but I want that sort of little drip to maybe break away, go into that side of the S. So I'm going to dupe that layer again and just bring it right to the end. So I need to do it twice. So it's coming through that side of the S. I think this one, maybe the drip will be inside the S, so I'm just going to dupe it again. And it's going to come out this side. Just going to dupe it again. And now the drip is kind of coming away from the S. So it's as though it's flying, basically. I'm going to go back to that original one and dupe it again. And I'm just going to use this line, the green line, as a little bit of a guide as to where I want that drip to go. And you can keep going right to the very edge of the sort of canvas area. You can make them get smaller or get bigger as they go, but it's just quite nice kind of flow. So now that, if you imagine that the whole S is animated in and the whole word is animated in, and then that just kind of flies off at the end and will disappear down here. So that's how I've done that. Another couple of little sort of tricks that I've used for this word is at the bottom of the H and at the bottom of the T here, where we've got a more of a pointy end. When it animates in, because obviously it comes down, when it gets to that point, I just did a few kind of dots coming away. So similar to that, the drip that I did at the very end. When it comes to that point, the first frame I had was something like that, a little bit of a bulge, and the next one was it breaking away, only really, really tiny, and you might not even spot it if you watch it. But things like that kind of just add a little bit more motion to it, so it's not just stopping, it does that, and then this tiny little sort of flicker at the end comes away from that, and then yeah, it was kind of like this really, and then the same for the other one, but obviously one dot on each frame, so it looks like it's sort of fizzling out at the end. And then for the I as well, I didn't want to leave the I till last because I wanted all of this lettering to be just in a really fluid movement. I didn't want there to be like a stamp on the I at the end. So instead, when I was animating down here came up for the the main bit of the eye, I let a little bit just break away. At first it was like that, and then it was a little bit bigger, and then it sort of formed a little space up here, and then slowly it just started to get a bit bigger, and then the whole the dot of the eye kind of formed out of that little bit of breakaway white. So yeah, just have a look out for that when you're watching. Okay, so that's pretty much all I did for that layer. But let me show you what I did for the others. So I'm going to turn off that layer now, and I'm going to introduce this layer. So I'm going to go back to the start. So there's a little bit of extra white that I've somehow managed to select by accident, but that's fine. Again, I'm just going to use that guide layer actually. Because it's quite handy to have. I want this kind of white shape to animate in from like up here. Okay. I'm going to start actually with a blank frame. So rather than duplicate after, I've just gone add after. But because it's after, I need to move it to before, so I'm going to use this button this time, which is going the other way. So I've got a blank frame, and then that comes in. So I'm going to turn on the onion skin actually. That's quite handy because so then I can see what I'm doing. So on that blank frame, I'm going to start with just a, oh, I've done it again. I don't want pink, I want white. I'm going to start with just a white line coming like that. I'm going to add another blank frame after that, and then I'm going to start the next white line about in the middle of where the first one was and let it go a little bit longer. Going to do the same again and again. And this is where our shape is going to start taking shape. So now I've just drawn the very first bit of our shape, but I don't want it to look too different to the shape that I'm actually using. So for the next layer, I'm going to use this, but I'm just going to erase bits of it. So we got this so far, as though it's sort of swooping in, and then it starts to build the shape slowly, not quite that fast. So I'm going to dupe that layer, and I'm going to start by erasing quite a lot. Just going to put my eraser size up there so it's a little bit quicker. So we're going from here to there, and I'm just going to slowly add on bits of this until it's full again. Let me just do that quickly. So I'm just trying to keep the end of this shape a similar shape to how it is when it finishes. So basically, so that it doesn't look like I've just erased bits of it. That's the idea. And then towards the end, I'm just going to add in a few more frames so that like this bit's all quite quick, and then as it's just finishing off, it kind of slows down a bit as though it's like ready to stop. Oops. Cool. So that grows in like this. And then I think on the original one, I also just at the very end added in a little bit of a line coming down like this. So similar to what I did on the first video. These little lines around the edge just add a little bit more kind of movement, especially when something stops, kind of like stops dead. It's quite nice for it to like finish. I can just duplicate that one now, so then I can just erase little bits of it. And just one last one. Okay. So if I just turn the guide off, actually need to add a blank one before that too, so that it comes in. That's it. And then it grows, and then we've got that little line just finishing off at the end. I'll just play that quickly. This is super quick, so I think in the original I probably did about 3 times the amount of frames for this one. But yeah, that's basically how I've done that bit. Okay, so on to the next. The next bit is do, which I've just turned on. The reason I can't see it is because my timeline's all the way up here. If I go back to the beginning, I can see it again. Ooh. So for this one, I wanted to make it look as though the white circle is kind of being like splodged onto the screen, if that's a word, almost like a paint splodge. So I didn't erase from this, I actually did it in a different way. I added a blank frame and then just put that to the front, so again just keeping this at the end because that's the final kind of thing. So I'm going to start actually with a blank frame, add another one so that it's coming from nothing rather than coming from like a little tiny splodge. So the first one I'm going to do is just going to be right in the middle of this circle, and I'm just going to draw a splodge, a tiny splodge, and then gonna add another one after that, and it's gonna get a little bit bigger. So all of those splodges that I've done are just going to grow a little bit, so that it doesn't look really like random. If I just use all the kind of shapes I've got there already and just accentuate them a bit more, so it looks like it's all growing organically. And I can add in a little extra splodge. Is splodge a word? I'm not sure. And add in another one after that. Actually, I think it's easier if we just dupe it so that then I know which bits I'm meant to be getting bigger and stuff. So again, just gonna make it a little bit bigger, and I can make these splodges a bit bigger too, and erase bits if I need to, although I shouldn't really be erasing bits. So in the end, I want to be filling this whole circle. So if there are areas where I feel like it's needs a bit more, I can add in another, although it should probably start off a little bit smaller. Add on another new one of those, and then I'm going to keep going with this, so that can come up here. Splodges are getting bigger. I want to get as close to that circle as I can in sort of shape and size. So each time I want to be adding a bit more, maybe a bit more here. And maybe the next one can be a little bit more circle-like. So we're nearly there with this. Almost. And then the one between this and the actual circle, I'm going to use this one for. So just going to duplicate that, and I'm going to fill in the letters because I'm going to animate those separately. So just to get a sort of something between that and that, I'm going to just make it a little bit wobbly around the edge, but not super wobbly because I still want to kind of maintain the shape. So it's almost getting to the circle. Don't want too many sharp edges on this one either, so it doesn't look like I've just erased a circle. I want it to look a little bit more organic than that. Okay. So now that we've got to the circle, I'm going to start animating in the letters. And to do that, I'm just going to dupe it. To do that, I'm going to use, I'm not going to make it drawing. I want these letters to, so if the white circle was like a splodge of paint, I kind of want these letters to come out as though the paint on the letters is just kind of dripping away. So I'm going to sort of slowly let the letters appear. So I'm going to make them all a little bit thinner, each letter a bit thinner. And in the thinnest places they can even sort of disappear a little bit. So like here, that can come back a little bit because it's quite small. I'm going to dupe that one, and I'm going to make it a little bit skinnier again. So here, that bit there is now super skinny, and each bit is going to just get a little bit smaller. That can probably go completely. Again, this is not it's not very neat, but hey. And I'm going to dupe that one more time. Yeah, so now I'm going to get rid of pretty much all of that, so that only the thickest parts of the letter are actually there. So you won't actually be able to tell what it says, but hopefully you will soon. Okay, so it's almost like it's emerging slowly from that paint, and obviously you'd add some more frames in there so that it doesn't look quite so weird. But so going from that splodge, again, this is super fast, but you get the idea. So coming up from that splodge, trying to make that circle shape, and then slowly those letters come into play. Cool. So that's all I did on the do. Just going to turn that one off now. And the last one is it, which is over here. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to duplicate it. And on this one, I'm going to remove all of these extra bits around the edge, because I only want these extra bits to appear right at the very end, once the words have kind of animated in themselves. The last one's got the extra bits on, and the first one doesn't. So because these letters are kind of 3D already, I thought it would be nice if the way that they animated in was kind of in a 3D way as well. So I'm just going to dupe that layer, frame I mean. You keep saying layer instead of frame. And on the first one, I'm going to use the eraser tool, and I'm just going to remove like a level of the 3D-ness. That's definitely not a word, but you know what I mean. So it looks a little bit less kind of tall, I guess. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to duplicate that again, and I'm going to do the same again. So removing a little bit more of that 3D. It's not really a shadow, but it's just kind of the height of the letters. So here it kind of looks like they're getting bigger. I'm going to dupe that again, and I'm going to do the same thing. So this is probably the last one now, so I'm going to get rid of everything up until the sort of front facing bit. Okay, so that's pretty much done. Except I've got the wrong layer in the wrong place. So, I mean the wrong frame in the wrong place. So this one's first, then that one, then that one, then that one. Cool. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer and bring it all the way to the front so that I've got a bit of a frame of reference. And I'm going to select this part, and I'm just going to move it so that it's in line with the original, so you can see the original bit underneath where the, I guess like where the ground is, and I'm just going to put this sort of in place on the ground, although it doesn't quite match up because I haven't done it very well. And I'm going to do the same with this one, except it will be the 3D bit now that matches up at the ground rather than the letters themselves. And I'm going to do the same with this one. Just move it down to there-ish. And now that one should be in the right place. Yeah. So I'm going to delete that one. Just going to check that that looks okay. Yeah, so now that we've got this line pretty much consistent or in the same place, it looks like it's coming out rather than just like growing. So that'll be our first one, then that. Okay, and also, so for these bits as well, whoops, I don't want them to just appear because that's boring. So I'm going to duplicate that layer, and I want to make it look as though these extra bits are kind of coming out from the words a bit like a firework. So they're going to be a little bit smaller and a little bit closer to the text when I draw them again. Okay, and then I'm going to dupe it again, and I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to do one more and then it should be pretty much done. Okay, I lied. I'm going to do one more now. And it's just going to be with like a few poking out a tiny bit. So I'm going to also have that one poking out. And this one. And that one. Okay. So again, with these extra bits, the triangles and the circles around the wording, if you think about like in After Effects where they have a speed graph of something that's moving, for this I'd want to make the speed graph look as though it's starting off quite quick and then towards the end of the movement it slows down so that it's like easing into place or easing into position at the end. So the way that you do that is just have less frames towards the beginning, and then as you come to the end just have a few more frames and make those movements a little bit smaller so they're kind of easing into position. That is the annoying thing about After Effects, is that it does have like easy ease, which is quite handy, and it doesn't have this in Rough Animator. I'm going to turn everything back on and I'm going to show you how, let's set the guide, don't want the guide. I'm going to show you how you can sort out your timings for the whole thing. So I kind of want this, the lettering for this, to animate in first because that's the first thing that I'd read. And then after that, I then want this bit to come in. Whoops. So the way that I can do that is I go to this frame here, which is the first frame of Is How We, and it's blank. That's just from the onion skin, so that's actually the next frame. So that frame is blank. What I'm going to do is just add more frames to that so that it doesn't actually start until here. Although I think I've added too many, so I probably want it to come in, I don't know, maybe there. So just going to reduce the amount of frames. Cool. And then for do as well, I don't want do to come in until maybe there. So I'm going to use that first frame and just extend it. So it's coming in when I want it to come in. Maybe it needs to come in a little bit sooner. But this is quite handy. You can just play around with the timings of everything. If you do things on separate layers, it makes it a bit easier, so you don't have to mess with like every single frame's timing when you do it. And for it, this is the last thing that I want to come in. So I actually need a blank frame at the beginning or else this is not going to work. So I'm just going to add a frame, but I need it to go before, so I'm going to press that button. And this needs to come in after do, so I'm going to give it at least the amount that do has got. I think it needs to come in after we read do, so maybe here. One more maybe. Oh, and everything else has now disappeared. So the reason it's disappeared is just because the frames finish. So the way that you can change that is by selecting the last frame, which has got everything on it that you want, although this one doesn't because I don't actually want that drip to be there. So I'm going to dupe it, I'm going to erase the drip, And again, I'm just going to make that last frame last as long as that lasts. So, and the same with this one and that one. So now that all should all, let me just play it and see. Yeah, I mean, it's still very fast, but that's because I haven't got very many frames. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I did it. Just gonna check back with the original one, see if there's anything that I missed. I think that's pretty much everything. But if you've got any questions or if there's anything that I've missed out, then just comment and I'll let you know. Yeah, small disclaimer, I don't actually really know what I'm doing with this app, so if you know like a quicker way of doing something really laborious that I'm doing, then please tell me, because that would be quite helpful. But I don't know, I'm just kind of teaching myself, so I mean, I'm probably doing it wrong, but there you go. And yeah, thanks for watching.